I
I
think
think
we
everybody's,
are.
you know, I'm so glad to see all these
Oh,
wonderful
that's why.
faces. And I want to thank Tammy for
Yes,
being the
now it works.
moderator and organizer of this today. Um, we have just heard some fantastic chamber music, as is entirely predictable from Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. Um, and and yet, I think there was one performance in this that was just off the charts and fantastic, and that was the Mendelssohn. I have never heard that piece played as fast or as accurately or as brilliantly as it was. And it, you know, Ryan is right. It does get played every now and then. You know, I did not know the story of Clara Schumann and Felix Mendelssohn playing it together. That would have been very chummy. And the reason I'm sure that you know, he wanted to celebrate the Schumanns was that, of course, they had been married. But I'm sure that Clara wanted to play with Felix Mendelssohn because he was a real macher in the music world then. In other words, he could bring about performances for them and for Robert's music. So it was a tight community, but it also, they were scratching each other's backs, literally and figuratively.
I'm not wearing my hearing aids.
Okay. Hi, Tom, as long as, yeah, thank you. If you can't hear, then pull up the volume if you will. Am I being heard all right? Am I loud enough? Okay. Gerald Moore wrote this wonderful autobiography called Am I Too Loud? Gerald Moore was a wonderful collaborative pianist who worked with vocalists a lot. And that was one of his quips. Anyway, I don't want to be too loud. Well, but it was fascinating. I mean, the logistics of playing that piece was just astounding. But one of the things that struck me about it too was that you know, there's the two pianists in the Andante both play separately in the beginning. Same piano, same piece, two different players, how different their tone was, even though they're right next to each other. And that just makes me remember the piano is an instrument, and yeah, the instrument is the instrument, but every pianist has his or her own touch. And there's just no denying it. They have a way of, you know, approaching the instrument. It's something they've been taught. It's something that they learn over time. It's second nature to them, of course, but you know, if you're a professional musician, and they can alter it. But you know, Hugh Watkins was playing deeper into the keys, and he had a sort of softer, rounder tone, and Orion was playing sort of further back and more down on the keys, and that gave it a little more brilliance, a little more bite to the beginning. And that sort of difference can be very useful in a piano four hands work when you want to know who's playing what. But the roulades of piece, you know, of notes and this, you know, the incredible arpeggio, the incredible passive work, the idea that they can sound unified in that, it's just astounding. I heard one instance in which they weren't entirely in step, and it's cruel of me to even comment on it. It was that good. It was just, I mean, it was just astounding to me. So I was excited about that, just like I was really excited about Appalachian Spring last week. And Let the Bright Seraphim was, I thought, just gorgeous. It's such a joyous piece. It does not outlive its welcome at all. It is just so concise and wondrous. Loved the gown that Joella had on. It looks like a different generation of the Kathy Battle gown. You know, really constructed, red, scarlet, you know, strapless. Kathy Battle slept that thing around the world many times, and I had to help her with it at least 4 times. But it lasted, and she spent a fortune on it. It was great. It's a great dress. I was rather surprised that, and I would like Joy to comment on this if she will, because we have a wonderful professional singer here. In chamber music, people use music, but often singers who are singing arias don't necessarily have scores in front of them. This one did. And Joy, I mean, you teach singing, you have been on many, many wonderful world stages. Do you have a sense, was that a security blanket? Or was that just everybody else is doing it, or I should do it? Or how would you view that if you were trying to teach a young person?
Well, first of all, I didn't notice very much. She didn't have her head buried in the music. She clearly knew it very well. And I think it's there because the ornamentation, you know, in those little dialogues that they had,
Hmm.
it might have changed. That some of that might have been just improvised, and maybe they just need to refer to it to make sure they know where they are. I don't know that every note was planned out, because that ornamentation was not routine. You know?
That's a really good point about the ornamentation. The embellishments sometimes can be very free and sometimes even wild in exchanges. But
Yeah.
I sensed that this performance was very predetermined, that they had worked all this out. And,
Yeah.
and that may be a very good reason why the score was just there, just to make sure that they had it together. It was glorious. I'm not criticizing, nothing was wanting. And as long as the singer gives us the singer's face and the attention and the energy and the sound is there, then that's great. I
Yes.
didn't feel it was wanting, but I from your comment, I conclude it was pre-planned. Yes, there was no wildness to it. If there's been an Italian opera house in the 19th century, it might have been different.
Well, yes, the thing that I noticed is that they didn't do direct imitation. So when the
Mhm.
trumpet came in, he did different things. He
Yeah.
went somewhere else. And
Hmm.
often it's just a sort of an echo effect. So
Exactly.
yeah, so they really did think it out ahead of time.
Hmm. Hmm.
We don't
Well,
know how often they practiced.
oh, I'm sure they were prepared. Yeah, this is one of the things that Chamber Society is known for. They don't throw things together. They really do prepare quite assiduously.
Mm.
And again, I kept telling people, don't be late for this concert because there's this great beginning to it. So it was a great pleasure. And the
You know,
Mendelssohn again, sorry, you had more.
Brandon Ridenour, his
Hmm.
parents live here in Sarasota.
Oh my
His
gosh,
Yeah, his mother was the development officer for the Sarasota Opera,
how about that?
and his father's a pianist, and they played on our music matinees several times. Both the parents played piano,
Sure, fantastic.
and he's an amazing trumpeter. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was either on the YCA roster or the Concert Artists Guild roster, but he got a really nice prize early in his career that put him into prominence, and he sounds terrific. I mean, my gosh, and so
That's,
confident.
yeah.
So great musicianship. The Mendelssohn was a treat, and I thought that was exhilarating. And then, in it, I observed for piano files that was a Hamburg Steinway. And Hamburg Steinway is really useful in this piece because there's the quicker decay in the note. And with all those notes, they got it, the quicker decay means the sound sort of gets out of the way faster. And that way it sounds a little bit more transparent than it would. And I doubt they would have had to have worked much harder in principle on the average New York Steinway to get that effect. But the pianos that they're working on are not average. They have superior pianos at Tully Hall for the Chamber Music Society, and they have a nice selection of them. Then we had the Franck Piano Quintet, which is, I don't know how many of you heard the introduction that Matt Lipman gave to it, but he said F minor is this really dark key, and I tend to agree. I think, something that's almost darker is F sharp minor to me. But F minor is a serious key. And here's a confession. As a programmer and as someone who puts together chamber music programs regularly, I don't dread this piece and I don't fear it, but I respect its intensity. It is relentless, this piece. Once it starts, it does not give up. And there's really no moment for the musicians to pause and breathe. There's really no minute for the audience to say, well, that's done. And now we're moving on to something else except between the movements. Because of the way Franck continues to introduce these ideas, these motifs, and he keeps spinning them in different ways. The musicians exchange them and develop them in senses by their modifications. They get repeated. So it's a piece that requires a lot of concentration. And yet I still think it's a magnificent piece. I think it's a marvelous piece. It's just that it's not what I would call casual summertime listening. But Franck rarely is casual. Franck was a very intense composer. But whereas the sonata that we so love, that we might still get from Wuhan and David this spring, who knows? You know, there's joy in that. You know, the Franck's, it's a sonata for violin or cello, or there's many other ways. I mean, there's a transcription for flute as well. And that piece ends with a tremendous amount of joy. This gets a little sunshine, and that's it. But along the way, the passion of the music is also what I respect. It is so deeply, intently expressive. And Matt was talking about there's too many notes. You know, you can't play all these notes. You can't hear all these notes. So some of them have to get more attention than others. I thought, well, that's a very pragmatic way of going about this piece. But for those of you who do not know the violinist, Jimmy Lin, Cho-Liang Lin, he is a marvelous, marvelous artist. If ever you get a chance to hear Jimmy, you should. He obviously was the leader of this group and brings a tremendous experience with it. Jimmy was born in Taiwan. He trained in Australia for a while, and then he came to Juilliard, and he's made his career in the United States, and he lives here now, but he travels all over the world. I worked with him. I've worked with him almost all my life. We're almost the same age. We have this thing of bumping into each other at airports. We bumped into each other at JFK. We bumped each other into at O'Hare, and once actually in Adelaide, strangely. So, but I've loved his playing, and I've been particularly fond of him ever since he played with the Minnesota Orchestra while the Minnesota Twins were in the World Series. David Zimmern was on the podium. David likes to joke, and so does Jimmy. So in the midst of the Sibelius concerto that he's playing, he takes out his, what is, a handkerchief, but it turns out to be a Twins hanky, and he sort of waves it. And everybody went berserk. I mean, there was total wild applause and came from that. And he plays the Sibelius Violin Concerto sublimely well. There is an Esa-Pekka Salonen recording he made for then CBS, which is now Sony. And it also has, I think, Nielsen on it. Yeah, I think it's Nielsen. And oh my gosh, I remember hearing this on an airplane once. I thought, who is this? Oh, this is great. It's Jimmy Lin. And Jimmy ran for many years. He was artistic director of La Jolla Summerfest, which is one of my favorite places to be this month. And I would probably be at La Jolla Summerfest right now if it weren't for this fill-in-the-blank pandemic. Because there's wonderful chamber music made there, and I discover new artists there, and I like hearing repertoire there. So Jimmy is a force for good. He's also an enormously important teacher. He's taught both at Juilliard, and I think he has a position in Texas as well, and he has his own chamber music festival in Hong Kong. We'll see how that goes. Hong Kong is very much in flux at the moment, as we all know. But to have a musician like Jimmy Lin working with these younger musicians is a gift. It is just a gift because he's so solid. He's so unpretentious. Ego is the last thing on his mind, and his ability to get to the essence of things with just a few words and a smile is just extraordinary. So I have huge regard for him, and I'm so glad the Chamber Music Society put him on for this because it needs maturity, and that's something certainly that Jimmy had. I'm wondering how other people responded to it. Was anybody hearing the Franck Piano Quintet for the first time? Yes, I see one. Yes, I see two. Yes, yep, there it is. I hope you don't feel neglected that I haven't let it happen at Spivey Hall for a while. But if there's demand, if there's popular demand, it can be had. It's a piece that musicians do know and study. But I would probably put it on the first half and then lighten up in the second half big time because it's just so serious.
Yeah, it was my first time hearing it as well, Sam, and the intensity and the passion is what got me. And of course, I adore Matthew Lippman. My daughter, Mandolin, is a violist. She's a senior in high school, so I'm partial to a violist. But when they were asking the questions after that, one of the artists said, what makes chamber music different is that there's no conductor, so it can be a real conversation between artists.
Mhm.
And I never thought of it that way before, that they really have to be talking to each other because there's no one directing them or conducting them.
Absolutely. For those of you who have ever attended a chamber music rehearsal, particularly with a quartet that is used to talking to each other a lot, there's a tremendous amount of care and attention, detail, discussion, experimentation given to chamber music. Symphony orchestras are immense, particularly the major orchestras, are incredibly efficient producers of music. And one of the things that they do to be efficient is that there's a professional librarian who does all the markings of all the parts for all the string players. And sometimes a conductor will come with his or her own set of parts, which has all of his or her markings for all of the instruments, because they have to put music together so quickly, literally in about 3 or 4 rehearsals, sometimes even less. So they have to have certain decisions made for them in advance to produce as much music as major orchestras do every week. Chamber music is a different story. The antithesis of that is the Marlborough Music Festival, where you go into Vermont and there's people there for at least 2 months, and they go there knowing that they're going to be playing certain music. It's a mix of generations. Some are young, some are more experienced, and they're always intermeshed. Well, they're usually intermeshed, let's put it that way. And the deal at Marlborough is not everything's going to be performed. It's not going to be performed until the musicians think it's really ready to be performed when they're done, which gives them an unlimited amount of time to talk about what the piece should be and how it should be played. And that is such a luxury. But that's how really good young musicians learn to think about the choices they make and can experiment and they're given the freedom just to really, delve into the music itself. So, in festival chamber music, let's say at Aspen, or that's not a good example. Let's say I used to do a festival in Minnesota, the Minnesota Sommerfest, and that would use both professional musicians who are freelance artists and soloists, and would use members of the orchestra. And those things would be put together pretty quickly. There wouldn't be a whole lot of rehearsal. They weren't thinking, what is the meaning of life vis-a-vis this fermata in the fifth measure? They don't go there. They have too much to do. And sometimes that would create, and I was involved in putting groups together that weren't already groups. That was one of the most challenging experiences of my professional life, because there are personalities involved. There are technical capabilities involved. There are temperamental situations to consider. Chamber music is such a personal way of making music, and you have to show up. You can't hide in chamber music. You show up as an individual, and everybody sort of knows what's going on, and then you have to figure out how much talking is there going to be about what's going on. So politically, it's a very challenging, it can be a very challenging way of making music as well. And the flip side of that is that, think of Schubert, think of Vienna, think of Schubert making music with his friends. That can be some of the most wonderfully beautiful, rewarding, and heartwarming sort of music making, when you're able to make music with people you really know and, quite frankly, have a fondness and a deep respect for. I think that's what keeps chamber music going. Why string quartets are so hooked on their repertoire, because when it's great, it fills this emotional need in these musicians that's very, very hard to emulate. It's just some of the glorious rewards of making music. Yeah, so Franck. Anyone else? Comments about Franck or anything else we heard on the program?
If you have a question or comment, just unmute yourself and ask away.
Oh, here's Tom. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were speaking at the end as to when did you come to the society? Is the society a fixed period of appointment, or is it a variable group year to year? I didn't.
Tom is asking, you know, how do people join the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, and for how long, and does it change every year, or, you know, what's the deal? And Wuhan and David are the co-artistic directors, and they have a tremendous amount of responsibility because they are the ones who choose the musicians who belong in the Chamber Music Society. That is a big responsibility. The youngest players who are brought into something called Chamber Music Society 2 are all auditioned, and they're on contract for typically 3 years. And that's sort of like the feeder team to the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, because they're going to do a lot of work with more senior musicians, and they're going to be put through their paces. And that's how Wuhan and David do select many of their more regular and ongoing members. Ani Kavafian is one of the people who's just been with them forever. I mean, she is one of the original people of the Chamber Music Society because she started so young. I think she probably started at 16 or something. I mean, really young. I'm not sure if everybody's under contract, but I do know that they issue contracts every year for the people who have complicated lives, because they can't always be available for every program. So I'll tell you this, I was offered by Joseph Silverstein, who used to be the artistic director. He came to me once in Minnesota and said, you should be the executive director of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, and here's why. You love music, you love chamber music, and you love musicians, and New York would be a great place. And I thought of, this is when I was actually doing all this work of putting chamber music together. I thought, this is a big job. And I think the people who do that work best are the people who actually play chamber music. I felt that that's what that job really needed. And I told Joey that, and I was so grateful that he even suggested it. But I told him, I don't think I'm the person for this job, because, you know, these string players and, you know, these wind players and these people who live in chamber music, they know what is and isn't, and they know how to create groups and partnerships with people that are musically effective and personally effective. So long answer, but it's I think it's a slow move. It's a slowly evolving group of musicians. Some people come back time and time again. I mean, Jimmy Lin has played off and on for a long time. And of course, so many musicians live in New York City. So, you know, if whoever creates these programs has a logistical challenge, Tom. There has to be a chart or a spreadsheet somewhere which has, you know, the availability of every day of an entire season for the following 50 people. And then they have to look at what music should be performed at what time and who's available, and then what puzzle can we put together to make this program work with the other availabilities of the musicians who are available for this program for, you know, this gigantic season that they do. And then that all goes to California in the summertime, because David and Wuhan have their own festival there, Music at Menlo. It's mind-boggling to put it mildly, how these things come together. But over time, the artistic directors know what the needs are, what the strengths are, what the opportunities are musically, but also how to balance things. So I know that when they're picking people, they're doing it to meet multiple needs at the same time. And I think, quite frankly, in the world of Wuhan and David, they're very, very concerned about musical excellence. They're very concerned about reliability, and they're very concerned about that diplomatic, each voice has its own right to participate in the conversation when making chamber music. And that was accentuated in what Wuhan just said and David just said at the end of this performance. So, Gilles Van Sattel was a Swiss pianist I knew from Australia. He joined Chamber Music Society Lincoln too, and he's now a permanent member. And he comes and goes because he lives in Switzerland, he lives in New York, he's all over the place. He came to Spivey Hall once for a recital. So it's not a rotating door, but there is give and take to it. That's probably the simplest way to say.
So Sam, I know tonight was the final streaming opportunity for Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center and for us to get together afterwards for a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for Spivey Hall?
Oh boy. Well, I've been dropping hints about this. And I've been doing some, we all have so many things available to us online. And, someone used the phrase, we are awash with online performances. And it's sort of true. There's an ocean of things being available. I think people first thought when the pandemic hit, there would be no music. Quite the contrary, there is now a superabundance of music available online, not the same as coming to a concert. But and some people are not so concerned about whether performances are actually live in the moment, which we call a live stream. What we heard today from Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, the performances were pre-recorded, but the dialogue and the commentary, particularly at the end with the artists, that was in the moment. I think they pre-prepared their presentations, their introductions as well. But in the end, it's musically very satisfying. And I've read a survey that patrons don't care too much whether it's really live in the moment or not. I get a certain kick out of it being live in the moment. I really do. I think there's a little more risk involved because technically something could go wrong, or somebody might, keel over because they're too hot, or, anything could go wrong. But I'm always interested in something that's happening in the moment. And my first streamed experience when I was looking at programming was the Berlin Philharmonic at 5 in the morning. How were they going to do this? I wanted to experience it. And I was really taken by the fact that I was hearing, Christiane Karg in the moment as she was singing Mahler 4. I thought that was so interesting. So there's this series called Live from London. It was started about, 2 months ago by a vocal ensemble called Wattage 8. And it's a wonderful vocal ensemble. They have not yet been to Spivey Hall. I've been working on it for a while, but they have their own performance center in London. And when the pandemic hit, they decided they needed to use this wonderful venue that they have, which is acoustically great for a cappella singing, to create a festival of a cappella singing. So they invited lots of different groups. And of course, the singing tradition in England is fantastic. There's ensembles of all sorts, both early music and contemporary and everything in between. So they were very quick to put together a series that would give us live performances from London, live streams where you can sit and hear it as it happens. And that started about, again, maybe 2 months, well, they announced it 2 months ago, 10 different concerts with Wattage 8 singing twice in this series with other guests involved. I heard the first one with Wattage 8. It blew me away. The power went out. And they had to sort of stop the live stream for a little bit, and we all wondered what was happening. But then they came back in, and they recovered from it. Yesterday, the Academy of Ancient Music played a Baroque concerti program. This was the one instrumental appearance of this series of 10 concerts, and it was just mind-blowingly good. Really, really fine playing. Richard Egar, conducting from the harpsichord, and Marcello oboe concerto, gorgeous. Vivaldi cello concerto, gorgeous. Anyway, so it was sold as a subscription series. The thing about this is that you gotta pay to hear it. They want $100 for a subscription, or I think they need $15 per concert. Believe me, it's worth it. This music making is superb. And rather than trying to do all 10, which is a lot to deal with, and quite frankly, I'm going on vacation this weekend, woohoo, I'm getting a break. I'm going to Tifton to relax and to sit in a private place, which has its own pool. I could be a hermit there and get out of my house. I can't wait. But, when we come back, there's going to be some great music involved from this wonderful series called Live from London. And I'm searching here for the page that tells me what it is. And of course, I picked up the wrong piece of paper. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so on the 5th of September, there's Voces 8. And they do early music, they do contemporary music, they do it all. It's phenomenal. There are two brothers that run Voces 8 and the foundation. And one is called Barnaby and the other is called, I think, Paul. And Paul is sort of the money person and the organizer, and Barnaby is the very articulate and very engaging singer presenter. They do, they do very engaging presentations. They talk winningly, they have a lot of enthusiasm, they're very clever, and they know what they're talking about. So I've enjoyed the intros and outros from them immensely, and the musicians always break up the intros to do that. So Voces 8 kicks off on the 5th of September. Then there's a smaller ensemble called Apollo 5 on the 12th of September. I've never heard them. If they're on this series, I'm thinking they're going to be good. And if you subscribe to everything, then you get everything on demand for a month after the whole series is over, from the 5th of October to the 31st. So you can either cough up $100 or you can do it $15 at a time if you wish. Then the 16 on September 19th. The 16 is one of the preeminent groups of early music, and the 16 have appeared at Spivey Hall. I've been asking for 15 years, and it's never happened because they're so busy, and the director is such demand. He has been with he has had a position in Boston recently, but he's based in the UK. Anything the 16 does, I want to hear. So like big check mark for that. Stile Antico comes on the 26th of September. And of course, they came to Spivey Hall. I believe it was the Bodens who sponsored that concert wonderfully. And that was just heavenly. It was just joyously good music making. These wonderful people just standing up and singing with such clarity and with such spirit, such verve and such. It was just magnificent. So we haven't had them back yet, so I'm ready to hear them again. And at the very end, they've tacked on something that is not coming from London. It's Chanticleer. Chanticleer is going to be singing from San Francisco. And Chanticleer will actually be giving a program called Love, Always, which is exactly the program that they were supposed to be singing at Spivey Hall in October, which unfortunately will not happen. We held out as long as we could, but they realized that they couldn't get together fast enough to prepare it to tour, and also that touring was probably not sufficiently safe for them to undertake. So I'm really happy that we will get Chanticleer's program, Love Always. It includes some wonderful music, including a piece by one of their former members' name, I think his name is Matt Albers. But they're also premiering a new piece by Stephen Sametz. It's going to be a world premiere performance. Stephen Sametz wrote a piece called In Time Of. In Time Of is a poem by E.E. Cummings. And Chanticleer recorded it under Colors of Love recording. That is my all-time favorite, bar none, Chanticleer performance. And Stephen Sametz is so gifted writing for these voices. So that to me is like, I need this, I want this, let's hear this. That should be really good. And the wonderful thing about all of this is that they're 2 o'clock on Saturday. They're not we don't have to wake up, we don't have to do breakfast for Live for London, and we don't have to go too late either. It's at 2 o'clock, the performances run an hour. There's some nice chat with the artists afterwards. They typically just sort of sit down on the floor in this converted church that they have, which is near St. Paul's, actually. I believe it's also a Wren church, if memory serves. So they're very informal about it. But Chanticleer will probably just hang out afterwards wherever they're going to sing from. I assume it's from their. They sometimes go to Lucas' studio to do their recording, so they might be doing it from there. I don't know. But anyway, that's what we're going to spend some time with. That takes us into the 3rd of October. So I'm hoping too that Tammy and I have talked about this. and by the way, the staff have long, long meetings talking about what are we doing, what should we be doing, what might we be doing. We want to try to find some piano to have events coming up between now and the rest of the summer, beginning of the fall. So I'm hoping to source some of those. I've been given a lead, a very nice lead to one of them, and soon Spivey Hall will be able to stream from its own website performances that we have either contracted or commissioned. In other words, it might be something that that's pre-recorded, or it might be something that we're going to be hearing that's unique to us because we said, come on, do something just for us. So we're trying to keep music in our lives, and we're trying to keep you in our lives, and this is how we do it. So until we're back in the swing of things, I'm trying to put together as musical experiences that I think will be worth your time. And it's just such a pleasure to see everybody, even in Zoom, even though we're not, rubbing shoulders and having a drink afterwards. It's just so nice to see people. So thank you all for coming.
And we'll be sending out an email this week, Sam, letting people know more about the Live from London and the details and which concerts we'll be getting together afterwards for a post-concert talk like this and enjoy your insights on the concert. But that's a paid music streaming, but there's also a free concert tonight on PBS with Joshua Bell.
Yes, that's right. Tammy found this, and it came from operawire.com, which is sort of interesting. Joshua Bell got married in October. He married Larissa Martinez, who was Andrea Bocelli's sort of female performance partner for many years. I think she still does sing with him. And there's this show that's going on called Joshua Bell at Home with Music. They have a home together in Mount Kisco, in what New York City people call upstate. We in Rochester and Syracuse do not consider that upstate. But, in New York City, they consider that upstate. So they're in Mount Kisco. Their home is beautiful. I think Josh still has his place in Gramercy Park. He had an apartment in Gramercy Park that was Architectural Digest times 20. It was so beautiful. It's so large. It's so clean. There's no clutter anywhere. It's a studio. It's a performance space. It's an entertaining space. It's gorgeous. I hope he didn't sell that. But they're doing this program together, and he has kids from a previous relationship, not from Larissa. He's had relationships with two women who both have the initials LM. The first one was Lisa Matricardi, and he had a son, Yosef, and then they had twins together. They never married. I don't know why we don't ask these questions. But he did get married to Larissa, and she's a singer. So they're doing things with friends that include Jeremy Denk and Peter Dugan, whom I don't know, and Kamal Khan, whom I don't know. And allegedly, it's being heard tonight at 7 on PBS in Eastern Time. I checked Public Broadcasting Atlanta, and I checked GPP Television. We don't get it yet. So I don't, unless it's online somewhere that I couldn't find, I don't think we're hearing it quite yet, but it may pop up. And that, Josh looks very relaxed in the promo. It looks like a lot of fun, and he's such a good player, and he's going to be working with some young people. So
it is available for streaming on the PBS website. I checked that, and it's going to be available for free until the end of August. And it's also available on Spotify already.
See, he's got a new CD coming out, or it came out 2 days ago or something. So this is part of the launch party, I think, for his CD. And I'm glad you found that, Tammy. That's the beauty of the internet. You don't have to worry about where it's happening. You just direct your browser to where it needs to be, and you'll get it. That's at 7 o'clock. Oh, and it's already started. So I've talked way too long, as usual. So there we are. So that's what's going on. And I should not keep you longer in case you want to listen to this. So thank you all. Wonderful to see you. Look for news. And we hope you'll come back and join us again soon. We are so grateful for your support. You have been very loyal to us throughout this difficult time. And we're doing now what we call what the Dutch say, we're taking a step backward to take a leap forward, and we'll be leaping forward in the fall.
Yes,
So
we'll have a
thank
lot of news for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sam. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye all.
Bye.